Pigsy here. I want to talk today about a game that I played in Alpha League against Inquisitor. Inquisitor is a really great player, and we had an awesome, super close match, so it inspired me to sort of make a video about it and talk about the game. So I'll give my thoughts briefly on the lists, but I won't go too in depth on the lists. I'll focus mainly on the gameplay itself, the tactics and strategies we both use, and I'll give my thoughts on some of the critical moments of the game and sort of break it down from there. So first, let's go over and look at Inquisitor's list. Basically, he's running a Demons list with a bunch of Demon Princes and a Sorcerer, and then he's got 3 units of 30 Plague Bearers. So his idea here is to take a bunch of spells on his Demon Princes and his Sorcerer. He's got the 2 little buff characters to buff up his Plague Bearers. So if he gets his spells off, the Plague Bearers first have a natural -1 to hit if they have over 20 models in their squad, which of course they do. They have a natural 5-up invulnerable save and a 5-up feel no pain. He can give their +1 to their save characteristics to give them a 4-up invulnerable save, and then he can. 2 of his characters also have spells that can give them -1 to hit, but they do not stack. So they will end up being -2 to hit, 4-up invulnerable with a 5-up feel no pain, toughness 4. Really hard to kill. So he's got them as a massive screen, and he also has the option to deep strike them with stratagems. So you have to fire at the only unit on the board one at a time, so you can't choose to fire at a squad that doesn't have the spells applied to them. And that also gives him a bit of threat to deep strike in and charge you. So he walks up the board with his Plague Bearers, of course, and his characters also give him a +2 to their movement so they can advance and get in there a bit quicker. And then he has his Sorcerer and his Demons behind with their 24-inch range 1,000 Suns Smites, laying down the law. And then he's got a Khorne Demon to get in there with a big Relic Axe, slice things up. So he's just going to deliver the package of the Demons into my lines. So this is very scary for me. Let's take a look at the list I'm bringing. So I brought 2 battalions of Tau Sept. So I've got my, what is it? It's about 55 warriors between them, so 6 squads. Each squad has 8 guys, and then 2 squads only have 7 instead of the 8. I've got my Fireblades for Markolites and the Volley Fire. I've got Dark Strider, who's going to be key for this game because he allows my infantry units to fall back and shoot if they're within 6 inches of him. So that's going to help me against his charges. I've got the 2 Riptides. They've got velocity trackers and advanced targeting systems, so that's +1 against fly, which is useful against his demons, but not useful against much else. And then the ATS is -1 in, AP, which is not a big help because he's got vulnerable saves anyway, so looking a bit rough. And then with this list, I also took the unit of broadsides with heavy rail rifles for a anti-tank option. I took these in case I was going to be matched up against a player using a lot of Hellhounds. I was afraid of that, but I was not matched up against that player, so instead I'm fighting these demons, and these rail rifles are basically useless. I would much rather have another heavy burst cannon Riptide and then additional fire warriors to take out his screen, but that is not what I've got today. So since Tower's Ballistic Skill 4, he's going to be -2 to hit. I'm going to be hitting on 6s, which is just, unless of course I can get those marker lights happening, and then I'll be hitting on 5s, which is twice as good as hitting on 6s. So it's very important for me to get those marker lights. I also can't move very well, but unless of course I get marker lights as well because of my heavy weapons. I do also have a team of stealth suits, which in this game I also didn't think my stealth suits would be very useful. They turn out to be okay, I guess, but again, against this list I'd rather just more fire warriors. So when I compare these 2 lists, I'm trying to look at what my game plan is to win. We're of course using ITC missions, so I have to be thinking about what secondary objectives I'm going to take, and then how I'm going to go after getting those secondary objectives. So looking at his list, he's got a lot of models, clearly, so Reaper, great choice there. I can max out after killing 80 Plague Bearers to get my 4 points. And then he's got a bunch of demons, which are characters, but also big monsters. So I also took Headhunter and Big Game Hunter. So Headhunter and Big Game Hunter do not stack on the demons. You can't score both for killing a demon that's a character and a big guy. So my plan is I'll score the Big Game Hunter first, and then go for Headhunter later, because he's got characters like the Sorcerer in the back, which I can only score Headhunter on. So I'll go for Headhunter later on those. I assumed that I wouldn't be able to kill enough Plague Bearers in time to stop the demons getting into my lines, so I was very focused on making sure that my Overwatch would be very powerful and be able to take out some demons on the way in. So I needed to ensure that his Plague Bearers couldn't charge and tie up some of the key units like my Riptides and Broadsides, so their Overwatch for the greater good would still be available to pick off demons as they come in. I also decided to save my Seeker missiles the entire game until that Overwatch happened. So going into the game, I had two ideas about how I would play it off. One would be wait until his screen gets close to me. If this is in the event that I haven't managed to kill off much of the screen, wait until they get close to me and then jump my Riptides over the top of the screen using Montcar with Shadow Sun. But of course, that means that I would not be able to use the other Master of War ability first, Caillou, to get the extra shots. So it was a bit of a, I don't know. It was, if he was going to go first and I just had a terrible turn and things were looking bad, I was just going to risk it for the biscuit, jump over his screen with the Riptides and just try and shoot his Demon Princes in the face as best I could, while also trying to keep them within 6 inches of my Fire Warriors and Broadsides to help out with further greater good in a retaliatory strike. The other option was, if I felt like I was doing an okay job against his screen and I didn't need to go absolutely balls to the wall, I would just try and back up and kite as much as possible while holding one objective marker to at least get that point, because there's no way that I'm going to hold more objective markers than him, so why even bother trying? So I deploy, as you can see, I've got a giant castle over here in the middle, just holding one objective here. I've got a big screen in front, all my Fire Warriors there, and then the Shield Drones. I've got my Shield Drones fanning out the back here as well, because Savior Protocols is not a massive deal for me, because he doesn't have a lot of shooting, I think. His entire army has 2 Warp Bolts, and that's it. So my suits are safe from shooting. I'm just going to get smited up a bunch, which will go into my Fire Warriors. And I've got my Ethereal there to give the 6-up Feel No Pain to all the Fire Warriors. So everything should be in range to do massive amounts of for the greater good. If he decides to come in with a warp time or something early, I should be able to pick off a demon easily there. And then I put my stealth suits on the other side of the map. And my intent with this was, I'll put them just in range so they could advance and easily get into this objective marker. If I was going second, then you, in ITC, when you go second, you kind of have this small advantage. Like overall, I almost always want to go first. But one of the things that you do get is kind of know what you have to beat for that battle round, right? So one thing you score is who controls more objectives at the end of the battle round. Well, you sort of have a tighter control over that because you can see who's on what. So I was thinking about perhaps using my stealth suits to take the objective that they're close to, and at the very least act as a sort of distraction to perhaps pull some of the army away from my main gun line and into the stealth suits, who then can perhaps get some hot shots off with their fusion blaster. Since they are Cecilia Sept, they can reroll failed hits with their fusion blaster, so I thought, yeah, maybe I can get a d6 damage in there, reroll it, get a nice hit off on a demon, weaken it severely, and if I'm super lucky, maybe even take it down with some burst cannons. So we roll off for our initiative. Actually, I'll go over deployment for the demons first. So he's of course got 1 unit of Plague Bearers in Deep Strike and then he's got a massive screen across the entire map, so he controls everything easily putting his characters behind the other 60 plague bearers there. So pretty normal game. He's just gonna charge up the board with the demons, see if he can get charges up or not. So Inquisitor did in fact win the initiative roll-off, but after some consideration, he actually decided that it would be better for him if I went first, and I think this was a mistake on his part. I'm not entirely sure why he chose to do this. I believe it might be because of the objective scoring scenario that I was talking about. It's possible also that he didn't want me to be in a position where he would be in rapid fire range of my 5 warriors on my first turn. It's possible also that he didn't want to run into a position where he was in rapid fire range of my 5 warriors on the second turn, and I still had a Caillou ready to just obliterate him with 150 shots from the 5 warriors plus everything else re-rolling. I don't quite agree with his decision to go second, because I think some of the survivability of his army does rely on getting those spells off on his units to get the 4-up and vulnerable save and the additional -1 to hit on the plague bearers. So I'm not quite sure what he's thinking. Maybe there's something I've missed here, but nevertheless, Tau goes first. So I do pop Caillou on my first turn and just try and mow down as many plague bearers as I can. And honestly, I do not kill that many. Be like, yeah, I managed to get the Marker Light buffs. I can reach for ones that don't have a -1 spell on them. So, I'm hitting okay. I pop Focus Fire to just get that +1 to wound. So basically, my entire army is wounding on 2s. I pick off a good chunk. It's not like a whole squad or anything, so I'm not going to get a kill point there. Inquisitor does in fact use his 2 CP to automatically pass for morale to stop more fleeing. The only thing he has going for his favor with morale is one of his little characters allows him to roll 2d6 and take the lowest result when doing a morale test. And then Plague Bearers also, if you roll a 1 on a morale test, then instead of fleeing, you resurrect d6 guys. So he's got like a 1 in 3 chance with a reroll, basically, of getting that. But of course, he cannot afford to risk that, because that would give me a kill point, and if he doesn't kill something, then I get an additional point for killing more units than he did, so he pays his 2 CP. And then on his turn, he moves up the board, comes in and starts smiting away, basically. I could have deployed a little bit better, to be honest, with my Fire Warriors. I've placed them in sort of blocks and rows, which means it is fairly easy for him to focus on one squad with all his smites. What I tried to do was split them up a little bit, so one smite would go to this squad and then another one onto a different squad, so on like that. But I didn't place them well enough. So I guess 2 squads take the brunt of them. What you can do with Fire Warriors, and I guess any other unit for that matter, is instead of putting them in rows, you put them in columns. So as they smite your units, your models away, then you sort of take them from the front down the column, which then leaves a different unit as the next closest unit for the next smite, which stops your units getting wiped out. Which for this game, I thought if I'm going to win, it's going to be very close. So I need to get every point I can get. So he smites away. I actually ended up rolling quite well on some of the Feel No Pains of the Ethereal from the Sense of Stone ability. And he manages to get me down to 3 Fire Warriors on 1 squad. So he tries to finish off, is it 3? It might have been 2 or 3 Fire Warriors left in 1 squad. And he has his Warp Bolters left to shoot. He's out of range for charges, so he really wants to kill off this squad, because if he does so, he scores that kill point for killing it. He gets his first strike point, which is worth another point because he took old school. And then, of course, he gets an additional point at the end of a round if he kills more units than me. So he basically gets 3 victory points if he can take these Fire Warriors out, which is which is why when he shoots at me with the warp bolters, I'm using savior protocols on my drones to intercept those shots, even though generally, you don't want to use your shield drones for fire warriors, you want to save them for your suits. So unfortunately I roll a 1 on one of my interceptions, and I realize how important this situation is, so I spend another CP to re-roll that to save the fire warriors, and I get down to just 1 fire warrior at the end of a turn. And then I debate a little bit, but I decided it would be best, for the reasons I've already laid out, to use 2 CP to automatically pass that morale test, because unfortunately they are out of range of my leadership 10 ethereal for that buff. So I do automatically pass the morale, which effectively denied him 3 victory points. So that's our first turn. So going into battle round 2, this is where I have to make my decision about whether I'm going to back up or try and jump past the screen. Given his positioning, I'm not in a turn here where I could jump past his screen now. So what I could do is step. He's also managed to place his units such that they're more than 15 inches away from my fire warriors, or at least the vast majority of them are. So if I want to get that triple tap, I have to step towards him and into his army. If I do that, I would have to be very, very careful of not leaving any gaps behind my fire warriors to give him the ability to warp time a flying demon prince in, because warp time does say as movement phase, so fly still works there. So he could jump past my units and then get a charge in onto my broadsides, which are the only unit that he could tie up, because everything else has fly or dark strider can help them up. So I deliberated on that for quite a while, because that honestly was my initial plan, but I decided, I did okay. Turn 1, picked off a decent amount of guys, so instead I do decide to back my army up 6 inches, which basically gives me another turn of shooting. But unfortunately, when I backed up, I'm going to be suffering a lot of those penalties to hit with my heavy weapons, so I'm very reliant on getting my marker lights. But also my marker lights are not hitting as well as they could, because again they're heavy weapons, and then there's the minuses on his plague bearers and such. I think he is down to less than 20 plague bearers on one of his units, but he hides them away, so he does have that -2. So I believe I get enough marker lights to negate the moving and firing the heavy weapon penalty, which is at 4 marker lights. But I unfortunately rolled a 1 on my uplink marker light stratagem, which gives me D3 extra marker lights, and then I used a CP to re-roll that, and I got another 1. So I actually don't end up getting enough marker lights to get the +1, which means the majority of my army is hitting on 6s. In fact, I think most of my army here I think everything is hitting on 6s. So that's a bit of a scary time for me, because I'm not going to be able to do much more damage this phase, or this turn, to his screen. And, at least I backed up, so yeah, he's a bit closer. Yeah, it's starting to get scary, so he may or may not charge me this turn. If he decides to charge me, he would basically just be going into a bunch of fire warriors that I've placed up on top of the ruins. He would probably only be able to fit 1 demon prince up there, and I'd get a decent chunk of overwatch. His plague bearers are very unlikely to be able to get up there as well, because they have to climb up, pay that 3 inches. If his plague bearers go up there, he won't have room for his demons. So I'm not quite sure if he was going to charge me or not. So let's go into his turn and see what Inquisitor decided to do. So on Inquisitor's turn, he moves up again after some careful deliberation. He puts his demons a little bit further back than he might, so it's not looking like he's intending to charge with them. But then he does decide to bring in his reserves of his plague bearers, and then he uses many demon spells to buff these plague bearers up, so if they do get into combat, it's going to be very scary for me. But on the plus side, since that is the only squad that he is likely to be charging with, I feel comfortable proccing all of my For the Greater Good onto those Plague Bearers, or at least the vast majority of it. And he still does have to make that 9-inch charge, and he doesn't have the character that gives him a +1 to his charge, so all he has there is just a raw charge to make with a +1, with a 1 reroll with his command. I don't know the exact odds of that, but I believe it's still slightly less than half. I think it's around 45% to get that charge in. Fortunately for me, he does not manage to get that charge in. He fails it with his reroll, and I managed to mow down, a decent amount of Plague Bearers. Hitting on 5s with Tau is nice. I also made sure I was throwing a lot of photon grenades at them because, of course, they give a -1 to hit. And my drone screen also helped ensure that those Plague Bearers did not come out in the back, so then I can continue to just push his entire army back with Fire Warriors without allowing the Plague Bearers to get on top of my broadsides. So he does make a charge onto my stealth suits, of course, with his Demon Prince of Khorne. The rolling goes well for me here as well. I feel like, unfortunately, I haven't managed to chip any damage on that Demon Prince yet with my stealth suits. They do have a -1 to hit in combat, which means he's hitting on 3s instead of 2s, and he is rerolling 1s because he's a Demon Prince. And then he rolls a couple of 2s. He's -2 AP, I believe it is. I think D6 damage. So I fail. I believe I fail 4 saves and I have 4 stealth suits, and they've got a 3-up save. So I decide to use my command reroll to attempt to pass on a 5-up that last save, and I get that 1/3 chance. I get a little lucky, and I do save my Chazveray, which will allow him to live for 1 more turn and distract that Demon Prince again and take another pot shot with his Fusion Blaster, so those other stealth suits do get taken out. I've got a few more smites coming through, pick off a few more Fire Warriors. That's okay. So let's go into turn 3. So turn 3 is a relatively simple turn for me, but it is also a very important turn for me. So because he failed his charge, he has all those Plague Bearers within 9 inches of most of my army, so I can easily get that triple tap range with my Fire Warriors. And since I have Shadow Sun, I can still declare a Kayun, which allows me to reroll all failed hits. So I use my second Kayun in this turn. I Markalite up all the Plague Bearers. I didn't use Focus Fire this time. I couldn't justify the 3 command points because I'm down to 4 or 5, and there could be some critical rolls where perhaps I need to use those later. So I do just absolutely blow these guys away. A nice little trick I did actually that you could try yourself is, if you see on my left flank, I moved some shield drones out there. The intent of these shield drones were, if things go really poorly with the attack on the Plague Bearer, I could charge these shield drones into his Plague Bearers and try and just sort of touch the very end of his flank, so he'd probably only get maybe 3 or 4 models that could actually swing on my drones, which would allow them to survive quite handily. And then on his turn, he cannot fall back and charge, so those shield drones are not particularly useful to me this game because he doesn't have a lot of shooting. I need a few in case I get some swings on my suits with some big axes to save. But I can actually use these to deny a charge of a big blob of guys. Because I rolled quite well in the shooting phase, I managed to take out that entire unit of Plague Bearers, so the shield drones were not needed at all. But they're there for a backup just in case. They've got plenty of movement so they can get back to my suits next turn. So I felt like that turn went well for me, so let's go and check out the next turn for the Demon player. So this is the turn that the Demon player is finally going to get his main charges of turn 3. which can be a bit of a weakness of his list. They are quite slow with those plague bearers. So, as I outlined at the start of this game, my plan was, if I was to back up, was to try and kill as many demons as I can in Overwatch. So I've castled up like an absolute madman. I've tried to block up as many holes as possible. I thought I had done a great job of this, but unfortunately he does manage to use a warp time on one of his demon prints of Zinch and give it a 3-up invulnerable save with a power also, and he flies himself up onto a ruin, and then he can charge down that ruin. So after his psychic phase was done, he's smites a few more guys, that's fine. I was very concerned about getting my broadsides charged by that demon prince, so my plan was to save as much firepower as I possibly could, so to try and take out that prince. Even with a 3-up invulnerable save, the overwatch from 2 riptides and the broadsides should be more than enough to take that prince out. But Inquisitor is a very good player, and he realizes this, and so he tries to abuse my positioning by just charging that single fire warrior that is holding the point, because he can easily kill that and then consolidate into my broadsides. So, okay, he won't kill any broadsides that turn, but he's tying their firepower up, and they won't be able to fire back at him next turn once they fall back. This was a really nice play, but I do get quite lucky here, and my broadsides, with the help of a few characters and some fire warriors, do actually manage to bring that demon prince down. Anyway, it was an extremely close roll where I get a rail rifle shot through, and then he command point reroll the save on that and pass that save, and then I fire my seeker missiles, and he manages to fail one more save from those seeker missiles, which is quite unfortunate for him. And then I roll a 4 on my damage, and I've already used a command point to, I think I re-rolled a wound with one of the seekers, something like that. So I'm out of command points, and he has 5 wounds left, so with 4 damage it's not quite enough, and it doesn't matter, 1 wound is enough for him to tie up my broadsides. So I had also been saving my Puretide Engram Neurochip, and I think a lot of people don't realize how good this the secondary effect of its relic is. Everybody focuses on the CP farming aspect of it, but it also allows you to reroll a single failed hit roll, wound roll, or damage roll for the bearer or a friendly unit within 6 inches. So I've kept it within 6 inches of my broadside for this very occasion. So I decided to use my once per game reroll to take that 1 in 3 chance to kill that demon, because if it's on 3 wounds, it doesn't matter. If it's on 4 wounds, it doesn't matter. But if it's on 1 wound or no wounds, that makes a big difference to me. So I do take that 1/3 chance, and I get lucky again. I feel like I got lucky a few times in this game, and I do roll that 5 and take that prince out. I managed to do some serious damage to some other princes on the way in. Now that I've got my Riptides freed up to fire Overwatch, I can chip off a bunch more wounds and really hurt his demons. So let's just go straight into my next turn here. So for me, it's relatively simple. I just need to fall back with my army as much as possible. I was aware that if I don't fall back at least 3 inches, he can do a heroic intervention on me with all his demons and bypass my Overwatch, which would be a sad day for me. But I decide I'm confident enough to just blow those demons away regardless. It doesn't matter if they can heroically intervene if they're dead. So I do manage to blow away basically all his demons, and my fire warriors manage to deal with those plague bearers. And then from here, there's not much left on the table, but we have been fighting for, I believe, what is this, turn 4 or turn 5 now? Quite late in the game, and Inquisitor's been doing well on the victory points. He's been controlling the map, so he's been scoring an additional point over me each turn for holding more objectives. He's been killing more units than me sometimes, I think, maybe not. because I did manage to save quite a lot of my units. He's been scoring recon every turn. He's killed it. I think he only managed to kill one character. He killed a Farsight marksman. So he's not doing well on Headhunter. So, you know, the points are very, very close. I've managed to kill a few of his demons, but I haven't maxed out Headhunter by any means. I have managed to score the Reaper. So there's only a couple of points in it, and I'm all the way back in my side of a table, and he's still out there scoring objectives. So I really need to get out there and try and finish off what I can. So on my next turn, pretty simple. Well, in a way, I just try and move up the board as much as I can. I'm still keeping the Sense of Stone running because I'm very concerned about losing a unit. I perhaps could have swapped to, I forget what it's called, something Grace or something like that. It allows you to reroll your advance rolls for units within 6, but I'm not doing too many advances. This turn, instead of charging my cannons, my heavy burst cannons on the Riptides, I actually spend my Nova Charge on the Thrusters, which allow them to move 2d6 in the assault phase, because I really need to get up the board there. I roll some decent, quite nice advances on my drones to keep them in range of my broadsides as much as possible, and then I'm advancing Shadow Sun and some other shield drones up to objective number 1 to try and hold that to score as many points as I can and diverse points to Inquisitor. So they're going to run up over there. I can quite easily take out that one Wound Prince left on my left flank with just Fire Warriors, so they move over to take out that. I've got plenty of smart missiles available to me on my broadsides and Riptides, but moving and shooting, they're hitting on 6s, so they don't manage to kill all that much. So I am moving out now. It's 2 points difference or so in the scoreboard here, so let's check out how Inquisitor tries to eke out those last few points. Pretty quick turn for Inquisitor here. He just tries to back up and protect his characters with the Plague Bearers as best he can. So you cannot shoot at a character unless it's the closest model, even if it's the only model that you can see. So he can put his Plague Bearers behind this large terrain feature in the center to attempt to deny me firing with my main weapons. My smart missile systems still do not need line of sight, so I can try and kill them off with them. So I have moved my broadsides up last turn. They're still in range, so I decide to use my last CP, I believe it was, to do command and control node on those broadsides, and that allows me to reroll all my failed wounds, so I can fire those 24 shots off from the smart missile systems at those last couple of Plague Bearers, hitting on 5s because why would it be? I think, yeah, he cast a spell on them, so I'm at a -1 to hit. So with the command and control node, I do manage to pick them off. I've got my Riptides positioned over on my left flank in such a way that they would be closer to that Demon Prince on the objective, regardless if the Plague Bearers died or not, but I do manage to kill them off, so that's nice for bonus points, basically. And I think that is my very last turn, or perhaps it was my... that is my last turn. So Inquisitor can still score behind enemy lines, potentially here. If he kills a unit, he gets a victory point. If he controls more objectives than I do, he also gets a victory point, which I believe would be enough for him to tie the game. So in his valiant effort to try and squeeze out the last couple of victory points, he uses warp time on his Chaos Lord, or whatever it's called, Chaos Sorcerer, advances him twice up the board, getting 6s all the way and flying into my deployment zone. So he will score Line Breaker there. Unfortunately, he cannot get himself close enough to the squad of 2 drones that are left to try and get a really nice smite off and take them down. So he doesn't bother with his smite. I have too many drones left on objective 1 for him to manage to clear them, so I also control them. So I do end up pulling this victory out just ever so closely. I thought this was a fantastic game. To be honest, I did expect to lose it going in. I thought his list had a bit of an advantage against mine. But I feel like I played in such a way that I gave myself a few chances where I could do well, but there were chances at the end of the day. But I did, as I described, roll quite well on some crucial things. So the crucial point gaining decisions I felt I made in this game, and the lucky rolls I got as well, were denying him that first strike point, which was effectively 3 victory points on his first turn, by spending the command points to reroll for my drones and automatically pass morale, and then I managed to run that guy away to keep him alive for I believe he survived the entire game, actually. Moving backwards was a big deal. It ensured that he got a turn 3 charge instead of a turn 2. It was unfortunate for Inquisitor that he failed his 9-inch charge, which then allowed me to use that Monk car that I had been saving for such an event. So again, I played a move that if I got lucky, I could capitalize on it. He didn't manage to kill my stealth suits in one swing with his Demon Prince, which was unfortunate for him because that stopped him scoring a kill point for that round, which I don't believe I killed a unit myself either, so that was 2 victory points there. And that stealth suit managed to keep that Demon Prince occupied for another turn, so it couldn't charge with all the other Demon Princes when he came in. And then I also got a little bit lucky when my broadsides managed to kill his Demon Prince on Overwatch. That was perhaps the largest one. It's hard to say. That one wouldn't have. That would have given him no victory points, I believe, because he killed other units on the charge, and I killed more. He already had killed more that turn, I believe. So there are no victory points involved in that one, but it would have tied up the firepower of my broadsides for a turn, which it's hard to say if I would have won with or without that firepower from those broadsides. I managed to kill most of his stuff without them, but it was such a close game that any sort of advantage one way or the other could have swung it quite easily. So thank you to Inquisitor for playing such an awesome match with me, and good luck guys in the Alpha League if you're playing it, and if you're not, you should jump in on the fun. I'll see you there.